that I encourage you to invite somebody else to sit down and watch this with you, because I'm literally going to take off tomorrow night. I remember working in New York City for a paid advertising agency, and I remember when the Super Bowl was coming around, advertisers paid millions of dollars for a 15 to 30-second slot. You know why? Because that's all the time they needed to get you to associate their product with the music that they played in the background. Just 15 seconds, and you walk into the store. Now, and the other thing is, what on earth does a woman have to do with a John Deere tractor? Come on, somebody help me. Now, in Southern Illinois, maybe a whole lot, okay? But Satan has found the art of getting you to think longer than you need to on things that you don't even need to consider. He's done that strategically. And so they pay $2 million, $3 million so that a particular product can be associated with a particular song, and you go in the store, and the moment you see that product, you remember the song. That's why sometimes we wonder why we think the way we do. The lyrics of the song introduced into the mind is the door that opens up the mind. Follow me carefully. The lyrics develop the thoughts shape the individual. So people will say things nowadays, or think things nowadays. I used to be in the disc jockey industry. I was a partier, believe me, partier personified. I would be in the party so long sometimes I could fall asleep in front of a loud speaker because my mind was so desensitized to what was happening around me. And nowadays you go down the street in some of these cities and you pull up next to a car, and you can't wait till the light turns green because your car is about to be blown apart by the speakers in the other guy's car. And you wonder how he's still alive. You know what I'm talking about? The bass is so low that I'm thinking, I've also followed a study that says a lot of young people below the age of 20 years old are having hearing issues. There are some cases where some young people came to emergency rooms with their ears bleeding because of the depth and the sub-bass that was in the backseat of somebody's car that they were driving in. Bleeding ears. But there's another side to that. Some young people can hear things that grown-ups cannot hear. Ringtones that they cannot hear. Ringtones that are too high for the older folk to hear. And so they set their phones when they go to school on this ringtone that the teacher can't hear, but the students can hear it. Well, what you don't know is in the very music that some of us listen to, in the very music that many young people buy, listen to me very carefully. And I'll talk about this and I'll show you the various ways this is actually happening. There are frequencies that are embedded in many of the songs that you can audibly hear. But those frequencies that you cannot hear, the mind can hear it. Following those frequencies are suggestive words in the lyrics that will break down your resistance to do the things that you would never, ever think of doing normally. It's called mind control. I'm going to talk about that, how these tactics of mind control have been assimilated into every facet of the industry, even in churches. It's amazing how it's happening. But when you go back to it, you understand what the wise man said when he wrote in Proverbs 23, verse 7. Look at this very short text, and I want you to read this with me. If you're following me, just say it in your home. Here's what the Bible says. For as he thinks in his heart, what does it say? So is he. So, let's go backward. A person becomes what they think. Your thought determines who the person is. So you mean to tell me that you could listen to worldly stuff 6 days a week and be a Christian on the Sabbath? You mean to tell me that you could listen to music that doesn't honor God and all of a sudden want to honor God when you come to church? No, you can't. Some people go to sleep with music. As a matter of fact, sometimes I remember going to work when I used to work in the Wall Street area, and I would take the train to work in New York City. I would always turn the radio on in the morning, and do you know the last song I heard was the one I hummed all day long? You know what I'm talking about? That's why it's even important, if you're going to choose music to wake up by, choose music that you don't mind humming when you get to work. Go to work singing songs like I'm saving all my love for you and you're married. Whitney Houston, Billy Paul. A lot of these songs are put to such beautiful tones and such beautiful music that it doesn't even catch your attention until you realize what you're saying. But the music opens the door and you start singing songs, and all of a sudden you realize you're talking about killing somebody, promiscuity, lying. You've got your family and they need you there, as Whitney Houston sang. But I try to resist being last on your list, but no other man can do. She's talking about somebody married to another woman. And we go around saving all my love. The music gets you to say what you would not normally say under well thought out circumstances. But what you have to keep in mind is that the tools and the methods of assault were first used on perfect angels. But what was the result? Look at Revelation 12 and verse 4. Tonight, I say again, is the night to base everything on the Bible. Revelation 12 verse 4 says, his tail drew a what? Third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Satan tried it out first on his own friends. He tried it out on the people that he worked with. Hey, let me see if it's going to work. And he went from angel to angel. And when he was done, 1/3 of the angels were expelled from heaven because Satan tried out something that worked. He said, hey, it works. So he got down to the Garden of Eden. That's why when you look about these, his tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven. When you think about that word stars, the entertainment industry is full of stars. Matter of fact, the best you can get is a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where dogs can walk past and defecate and people spit on and the rain falls on and cigar butts are crushed on. That's not the star I want. I want a star in heaven. What about you? But the best the world can give you is a star on the street somewhere. Stars. The very thing that Satan caused to be kicked out of heaven is the very thing he offers you now. You want to be a star? It doesn't mean anything, because if you got kicked out of heaven and you can't go back in being a star, what good is it? Then he tried that on 2 perfect individuals. Follow the thought. Perfect angels, they fell. Perfect individuals, what happened to them? They fell. Romans 3 verse 23 says, for all have sinned and do what? Fall short of the glory of God. When you follow the manifesto of the occult movement, you find out that it was born in Eden. It was born in the garden. It was first tried out in a perfect environment. If it could work in heaven, can it work on earth? Of course it can. An imperfect, in every respect, environment, but a being that has not forgotten how to use his tools. That's why at the top of the list of the methods used by the occult movement is mental programming and hidden attacks. You see, by entertaining what Satan said, Eve was, and get this now, a different approach to this, Eve was programmed to think opposite to what she knew was right. And he did that by not being honest. And by the way, the word occult, which I'm going to talk about a whole lot starting tomorrow night. Occult is the Latin word for occultus, meaning to conceal, to hide, or simply eclipse. Have you heard that term before somewhere? There's a whole new series now called Eclipse about vampires. What's eclipsed? Satan. You see all these young, beautiful ladies and young, chiseled guys, and you want to be like them, stars. But get this, friend, the truth has been eclipsed. Vampires, and there are a lot of people nowadays, even young people, talking about experimenting, having friends. If I drink your blood, you drink my blood. We are vampire friends. It's happening today. Who's molding their minds? Not God. He shed his blood. We don't have to shed ours. What do you say? Something else. How effective was Satan's assault against Eve? Notice what she says in Genesis 3 and verse 13. Here's her testimony. This is what a perfect woman said. She said, the woman said, the serpent deceived me, and what did I do? And I ate. And Revelation continues, Revelation 12 and verse 9. He did it on the woman then, and led Adam and Eve down the wrong path. Adam was one that went in with his eyes wide open. Eve also chose to go down the path of disobedience. But here's the plan he has for today. Revelation 12 and verse 9. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives how much of the world? The whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And then you continue following whether or not it's working. One of the first signs Jesus warned against as it pertains to the end. Now, we had a lot of earthquakes. New Zealand just recently. Now this one in Japan, a terrible earthquake. Keep praying for them. But that's not what Jesus warned about when it pertained to the end. In Matthew 24, verse 3 and 4, they came to Jesus and said to him, "What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Jesus said to his disciples, what did he say? "Take heed that no one," what? "Deceives you." We are living in the age of deception. And by the way, when I look at this, friends, I'm beginning to believe that people like to be deceived. I mean, how many movies have you seen an actor killed in this one, he's in another one, he get killed in that one, he's in another one? We have been so molded by things that are not real that we are getting prepared for the most unreal, real thing that will ever occur to humanity. The appearing of the false Christ. Unreal in the sense that he's not really Christ, but real in the sense that it is a grand illusion. We are so molded by things that are not real that we don't even move with sympathy when we hear 30,000 people died in this recent earthquake. We say, "Oh, that's so sad," and we go on like nothing has happened. Because we see earthquakes all around us. We hear about people being shot, but we think about gangster rap, where shooting and killing is glorified. I'll talk about that. The hip-hop industry and the rock industry. I'll talk about that starting tomorrow night. You see, Satan has so worked his art that deception today is at an all-time high. Well, here's some questions as I begin to wind down for tonight. 3 questions. What did Satan promise Eve? In other words, where did he meet her? He met her at the tree of the knowledge of what? Good and evil. Get this. When good and evil are at the very same intersection and both are used at the very same time, that's the highest form of deception. Because something is true about it, but something is false about it. Evil and good merge together. It's blended. That's what's called the amalgamation of good and evil. It brings out one product, an alloy really called deception. What did he promise? Follow this carefully because this lays the foundation. He said to Eve, "Your eyes will be" what? Opened. In other words, he promised Eve enlightenment. He said to her, "You will see more than God permits." Now get this. How many things have you seen that you wish you never saw? Raise your hands. You can't get it out of your mind. That's one of the reasons why my wife and I have we don't watch those scary movies. You know why? Because we live in the country. And there's enough dark outside. Amen, somebody. But if you put that stuff in your mind, it becomes your own worst enemy. You are molded in the wrong direction. There's something else he did. And by the way, when he talks about your eyes will be open, Satan has built an entire industry on this, an industry of illumination called the Illuminati. And something else that you may not have heard about before, he has also based an industry on something called the third eye. You got 2. He added 1 more. We'll talk about that as the series continues to progress. But he also promised something else to Eve. He said, "You will be like God." He didn't say you will be God. He said you'll be like God. In other words, instead of only God being worshipped, I'll also work it out that people will worship you. And you can't convince me that actors are not being worshipped and music icons are not being worshipped. What will take a person to crying to the point where they lose consciousness just by seeing somebody step out on a stage? That's the lowest form of worship. Worshipping a man, worshipping a single woman, worshipping an icon. One woman could stand in a stadium of 60,000 people and everybody's falling out, screaming her name, breaking their necks to get to the front of the line. Why? Because Satan has so fixed it that not God, but you, that's what he said to Eve, you'll be like God. You'll be the one that's being worshipped. And Matthew makes it clear. He even promised this to God. But I want you to read this. Look at what he promised to Jesus. Matthew 4, verse 8 and 9. Matthew 4, verse 8 and 9. The reason why rich people and famous people are being worshipped is right here in this text. He says about Jesus, "Again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain." What kind of mountain, friends? Exceedingly high. I've hit the high times. I've hit the high life. I'm living high. I'm living high on the hog. All these terms, that's what the devil's all about. He wants you to live high. He wants you to get high. Exceedingly high mountain, and showed him how many of the kingdoms? All the kingdoms of the world and their glory. Man, I wish I was that wealthy. That's what we say. And he said to Jesus and to him, "All these things I will give you," and here's the hook, "if you fall down," and say it with me, "and worship me." You cannot be in that industry without worshiping the devil. It is impossible. Those are his terms. I'll give it to you. But here's the clause. You got to worship me.